Hi, I'm Julie, and we're talking about photosynthesis. We're trying to figure out where the high energy electrons come from that are in glucose and how plants make glucose. Okay, so we know that it's made inside these organelles right here in eukaryotes in chloroplasts. So this is our Elodea leaf underneath the microscope, and we can see our chloroplasts. And here is a cartoon figure of a chloroplast, and inside that chloroplast we have these structures called thylakoids. And a stack of these thylakoids is kind of like a pancake. A stack of pancakes is called a granum. And inside the chloroplast, the fluid inside is called the stroma. Okay, so let's have a closer look inside the stroma. And how is the energy coming from the sun gonna make glucose? So the energy coming from the sun, we know, is in a waveform and a particle form called a photon. And we know that in plants, chlorophyll A is a pigment molecule, and it absorbs blue wavelength of light of the visual range and red, and reflecting the green. So that's why we see green, right? Green plants. Okay, so this energy goes into photosynthesis. Okay, so here is a granum, or excuse me, here is a thylakoid. And there's a lot of the same players that we've seen before. This is sort of a cartoon representation. Normally there would of course be a stack of thylakoids, or stack of pancakes. So it would be a granum. But we're just looking at one of those thylakoids. Okay, and same players. Here is a phospholipid bilayer, and here's each individual. You can see individual phospholipid molecules in here. In this membrane, similar to cellular respiration, in the mitochondria, there is an electron transport chain set up in this membrane. So these are proteins in this membrane, and they're transferring high energy electrons from protein to protein, and in the process setting up this concentration gradient. So the hydrogen ions, again, just like cellular respiration, are being pumped through the membrane to set up this hydrogen ion concentration gradient. And in the end, those electrons are going into this molecule right here. So let me get my pen. So this molecule right here, NADPH, this is where our stars of the show end up, our high energy electrons. In this process right here, so we've got this concentration gradient being set up, and over here, here is another player that we've seen before, our ATP synthase. And so the hydrogen ions flow through the ATP synthase and turn this water wheel, or this wheel like a water wheel, and make ATP. Okay, but where do these high energy electrons come from? Well, we know they're coming, they have something to do with the light going through and then going into NADPH. So we've seen a high energy electron carrier before. What we've seen before in cellular respiration is NAD plus and NADH. And so our high energy electrons were put into NAD plus, similar to like a taxi, to become NADH. And that the taxi, or the carrier, transported those high energy electrons to the electron transport chain. Well, now in photosynthesis, instead of NAD plus, we have NADP and NADPH as our high energy electron carrier. Okay, so let's take a closer look at a photosystem. So in photosynthesis, we have photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. And in each one, there is a protein that has our chlorophyll A pigment molecules. And the photon, the energy photon, comes in and energizes the electrons in this chlorophyll molecule. So let me show you how that works. So when energy is absorbed, so here's a familiar character again. This is an atom. Here's our nucleus, and we know inside the nucleus is our proton and our neutrons. And here's an electron, and these are energy levels. So when energy is absorbed by the atom, the electrons get bumped up to a higher energy level. When the electrons go down to a lower energy level, energy is released. So sun, electromagnetic radiation in the form of photons, energizes this electron. So it's absorbed into the atom and energizes that electron and bumps it up to a higher energy level. Okay, so let's go back. So our chlorophyll A molecule right here, the electron gets bumped up to a higher energy level. And this one over here also gets bumped up to a higher energy level. And this one over here gets bumped up to a higher energy level. And it passes the energy to molecule to molecule. And it's also happening over here. We've got light coming in over here and energizing these chlorophyll A molecules, bumping up the electrons to a higher energy level and passing that energy from molecule to molecule until finally all that energy gets passed to these special molecules right here, special chlorophyll A molecules. And there's so much energy that it bumps up those electrons to the point that it actually loses the electrons. They get lost out of the chlorophyll A molecule and go into this primary electron acceptor. So all this energy goes into this reaction center right here where those chlorophyll A molecules are, bumps up that that electron so much that it leaves that atom and then goes to this primary electron acceptor. and then it goes into our electron transport chain. Okay, so let's go back. So here it is. We've got two of these. One is in photosystem 2 and one is in photosystem 1. And so here is the stars, our electrons right there. So they've gone, the photon has bumped up these electrons and they go from chlorophyll A molecule to chlorophyll A, and then they get bumped up, and here they are, and then they get sent through this chain, setting up this concentration gradient, creating high concentration of hydrogen ions inside the thylakoid space. So it's happening over here as well as happening over here. So these electrons that come through photosystem 2 end up in photosystem 1. They've lost energy as they've gone through, and then they get bumped up again with more energy to go through photosystem 1. And they end up in NADPH. So here's our stars right there. And ATP synthase, using the concentration gradient, hydrogen ion concentration gradient, makes a little bit of ATP. Now this ATP is not enough for all the metabolism that needs to happen, all the work that needs to be done inside the cell. But a lot of the energy is right here in this molecule. So these molecules now go to the Calvin cycle. Okay, we still have a problem though. So where did those, if we have electrons that leave photosystem 2, those electrons need to be replaced before any electrons can move through the system again. So it's like that bucket brigade again. That we've got our electrons out here, but we need to replace the electrons that have left photosystem 2. The electrons come out of water. So this is an important player in photosynthesis. So water is broken up. Those bonds are broken. Remember, it takes a lot of energy to break those bonds of water. And the electrons come from our hydrogens to make our oxygen. So what's left is oxygen. After we split this water molecule up, we get oxygen, and we get 2 hydrogen ions, which helps with our concentration gradient, and it creates oxygen. So that's a product of photosynthesis, and that's what we breathe. That's where we get our oxygen. That's where animals get their oxygen to breathe, is from this process right here. Okay, so electrons come from water, come from the hydrogens in water, leaving oxygen, which can, because it's a small molecule, can leave the system. And our high energy electrons now go into NADPH, and those will go to the Calvin cycle. So that's where we're going to go as well, to the Calvin cycle. I hope you found that interesting.